Crisis management is the process by which an organization deals with a major event that threatens to harm the organization, its stakeholders, or the general public. The study of crisis management originated with the large-scale industrial and environmental disasters in the 1980s. It is considered to be the most important process in public relations. Three elements are common to a crisis: a threat to the organization, the element of surprise, and a short decision time. Venet argues that crisis is a process of transformation where the old system can no longer be maintained. Therefore, the fourth defining quality is the need for change. If change is not needed, the event could more accurately be described as a failure or incident. In contrast to risk management, which involves assessing potential threats and finding the best ways to avoid those threats, crisis management involves dealing with threats before, during, and after they have occurred. It is a discipline within the broader context of management consisting of skills and techniques required to identify, assess, understand, and cope with a serious situation, especially from the moment it first occurs to the point that recovery procedures start. Introduction. Crisis management is a situation-based management system that includes clear roles and responsibilities and process-related organizational requirements company-wide. The response shall include action in the following areas: crisis prevention, crisis assessment, crisis handling, and crisis termination. The aim of crisis management is to be well prepared for crisis, ensure a rapid and adequate response to the crisis, maintaining clear lines of reporting and communication in the event of crisis, and agreeing rules for crisis termination. Crisis management consists of different aspects including methods used to respond to both the reality and perception of crisis, establishing metrics to define what scenarios constitute a crisis and should consequently trigger the necessary response mechanisms, communication that occurs within the response phase of emergency management scenarios. Crisis management methods of a business or an organization are called a crisis management plan. A British Standard BS 11200-2014 provides a useful foundation for understanding terminology and frameworks relating to crisis. In this document, the focus is on the corporate exposure to risks, in particular to the black swan events that result in significant strategic threats to organizations. Currently there is work ongoing to develop an international standard. Crisis management is occasionally referred to as incident management, although several industry specialists such as Peter Power argue that the term crisis management is more accurate. A crisis mindset requires the ability to think of the worst-case scenario while simultaneously suggesting numerous solutions. Trial and error is an accepted discipline, as the first line of defense might not work. It is necessary to maintain a list of contingency plans and to be always on alert. The credibility and reputation of organizations is heavily influenced by the perception of their responses during crisis situations. The organization and communication involved in responding to a crisis in a timely fashion makes for a challenge in businesses. There must be open and consistent communication throughout the hierarchy to contribute to a successful crisis communication process. The related terms emergency management and business continuity management focus respectively on the prompt but short-lived first aid type of response and the longer-term recovery and restoration phases. Crisis is also a facet of risk management, although it is probably untrue to say that crisis management represents a failure of risk management, since it will never be possible to totally mitigate the chances of catastrophes occurring. Types of crisis. During the crisis management process, it is important to identify types of crises in that different crises necessitate the use of different crisis management strategies. Potential crises are enormous, but crises can be clustered. Lurbing are categorized 8 types of crises: natural disaster, technological crises, confrontation, malevolence, organizational misdeeds, workplace violence, rumors, terrorist attacks, man-made disasters. Natural crises, typically natural disasters, are such environmental phenomena as earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tornadoes and hurricanes, floods, landslides, tsunamis, storms, and droughts that threaten life, property, and the environment itself. Example: 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake. Technological crisis. Technological crises are caused by human application of science and technology. Technological accidents inevitably occur when technology becomes complex and coupled and something goes wrong in the system as a whole. Some technological crises occur when human error causes disruptions. People tend to assign blame for a technological disaster because technology is subject to human manipulation, whereas they do not hold anyone responsible for natural disaster. When an accident creates significant environmental damage, the crisis is categorized as megadamage. Samples include software failures, industrial accidents, and oil spills. Examples: Chernobyl disaster, Exxon Valdez oil spill, Heartbleed security bug. Confrontation crisis. Confrontation crisis occur when discontented individuals or groups fight businesses, government, and various interest groups to win acceptance of their demands and expectations. The common type of confrontation crisis is boycotts, and other types are picketing, sit-ins, ultimatums to those in authority, blockade or occupation of buildings, and resisting or disobeying police. Example: Rainbow PUSH's boycott of night. Crisis of malevolence. An organization faces a crisis of malevolence when opponents or miscreant individuals use criminal means or other extreme tactics for the purpose of expressing hostility or anger toward, or seeking gain from, a company, country, or economic system, perhaps with the aim of destabilizing or destroying it. Sample crises include product tampering, kidnapping, malicious rumors, terrorism, and espionage. Example: 1982 Chicago Tylenol murders. Crisis of organizational misdeeds. Crises occur when management takes actions it knows will harm or place stakeholders at risk for harm without adequate precautions. Lurbinger specified 3 different types of crises of organizational misdeeds: crises of skewed management values, crises of deception, and crises of management misconduct. Crises of skewed management values. Crises of skewed management values are caused when managers favor short-term economic gain and neglect broader social values and stakeholders other than investors. This state of lopsided values is rooted in the classical business creed that focuses on the interests of stockholders and tends to disregard the interests of its other stakeholders such as customers, employees, and the community. Example: Sears sacrifices customer trust. It has 3 stages: pre-crisis, acute, chronic, and conflict resolution. Crisis of deception. Crisis of deception occur when management conceals or misrepresents information about itself and its products in its dealing with consumers and others. Example: Dow Corning's silicone gel breast implant. Crisis of management misconduct. Some crises are caused not only by skewed values and deception but deliberate amorality and illegality. Workplace violence. Crises occur when an employee or former employee commits violence against other employees on organizational grounds. Example: DuPont's Lycra rumors. False information about an organization or its products creates crises hurting the organization's reputation. Sample is linking the organization to radical groups or stories that their products are contaminated. Example: Procter & Gamble's logo controversy. Crisis leadership. Alan Hilberg, a pioneer in crisis management, defines organizational crises as categorized as either acute crises or chronic crises. Erica Hayes James, an organizational psychologist at the University of Virginia's Darden Graduate School of Business, identifies 2 primary types of organizational crisis: James defines organizational crisis as any emotionally charged situation that, once it becomes public, invites negative stakeholder reaction and thereby has the potential to threaten the financial well-being, reputation, or survival of the firm or some portion thereof. Sudden crisis. Smoldering crises. Sudden crises are circumstances that occur without warning and beyond an institution's control. Consequently, sudden crises are most often situations for which the institution and its leadership are not blamed. Smoldering crises differ from sudden crises in that they begin as minor internal issues that, due to managers' negligence, develop to crisis status. These are situations when leaders are blamed for the crisis and its subsequent effect on the institution in question. James categorizes 5 phases of crisis that require specific crisis leadership competencies. Each phase contains an obstacle that a leader must overcome to improve the structure and operations of an organization. James's case study on crisis in the financial services sector, for example, explores why crisis events erode public trust in leadership. James's research demonstrates how leadership competencies of integrity, positive intent, capability, mutual respect, and transparency impact the trust-building process. Signal detection, preparation and prevention, containment and damage control, business recovery, learning. Signal detection, sense-making, represents an attempt to create order and make sense, retrospectively, of what occurs. Perspective-taking, the ability to consider another person's or group's point of view. Preparation and prevention. It is during this stage that crisis handlers begin preparing for or averting the crisis that had been foreshadowed in the signal detection stage. Hilberg has demonstrated that using an impact probability model allows organizations to fairly accurately predict crisis scenarios. He's recognized the greatest organizational challenge is speaking truth to power, to predict truly worst-case scenarios. Organizations such as the Red Cross's primary mission is to prepare for and prevent the escalation of crisis events. Walmart has been described as an emergency relief standard-bearer after having witnessed the incredibly speedy and well-coordinated effort to get supplies to the Gulf Coast of the United States in anticipation of Hurricane Katrina. Containment and damage control. Usually the most vivid stage. The goal of crisis containment and damage control is to limit the reputational, financial, safety, and other threats to firm survival. Crisis handlers work diligently during this stage to bring the crisis to an end as quickly as possible to limit the negative publicity to the organization, and move into the business recovery phase. Business recovery. When crisis hits, organizations must be able to carry on with their business in the midst of the crisis while simultaneously planning for how they will recover from the damage the crisis caused. Crisis handlers not only engage in continuity planning, but will also actively pursue organizational resilience. Learning in the wake of a crisis. Organizational decision-makers adopt a learning orientation and use prior experience to develop new routines and behaviors that ultimately change the way the organization operates. The best leaders recognize this and are purposeful and skillful in finding the learning opportunities inherent in every crisis situation. Crisis communication. The effort taken by an organization to communicate with the public and stakeholders when an unexpected event occurs that could have a negative impact on the organization's reputation. This can also refer to the efforts to inform employees or the public of a potential hazard which could have a catastrophic impact. There are 3 essential steps that an organization can take to prepare for and withstand a communications crisis. 1. Define your philosophy. 2. Assess your vulnerabilities. 3. Develop a protocol.